The transmission came in just past midnight, hidden in the static of a long-range relay. A whisper across the void. Commander Elias Vance leaned forward in his chair, his fingers tightening around the armrests. The room was dimly lit, illuminated only by the soft blue glow of the holodisplays floating above the console. The message had been short, too short. A deep space outpost, one of humanity's silent sentinels stationed at the edge of known space, had gone dark. No distress call, no emergency beacon, just silence. Beside him, Lieutenant Arya Kate tapped through the system logs, her brow furrowed. Nothing on the deep scan. No ship signatures, no radiation anomalies. If something hit them, it didn't leave a trace. Vance exhaled, slow and measured. He had been in this game long enough to recognize the shape of a threat by its absence. The galaxy was vast, full of species that saw humanity as a curiosity, a stubborn but irrelevant anomaly. At least, that's what they had been led to believe. The door behind them hissed open, and Dr. Renokata stepped in, a tablet clutched in his hand. His lab coat was unbuttoned, a clear sign he had been working for hours without a break. "I ran an analysis on the last data burst before they went dark," he said, placing the tablet on the console. A flick of his fingers sent streams of data cascading across the holodisplay. "There's an irregularity in the station's final logs. They detected something moving in system, something big, but before they could get a clear read, everything cut out." Arya's fingers hovered over her console. So either they were destroyed before they could react, or they never saw what was coming, Vance finished. He glanced at the map hovering before them. The station was positioned near the Zeta-3 corridor, a dead region of space with no major colonies, no trade routes, no strategic value. If something was out there, it had no reason to be, unless it was watching. Vance stood. "We scrambled the blackout fleet. Full stealth approach." Arya hesitated. "You think it's them?" "I don't believe in coincidences." For centuries, humanity had perfected the art of being underestimated. The other races of the galaxy measured strength in fleet size, in planetary conquests, and open displays of power. But humanity had learned from a much older, more ruthless teacher. Predators did not announce their presence. They watched. They studied. And when they struck, it was only after the prey had already lost. The Blackout Fleet was the culmination of that philosophy. Ships designed to be invisible, not just to the eye, but to sensors, gravity wells, even the very fabric of space-time. Humanity's greatest weapon was not brute force, but the ability to exist without being seen, until it was too late. The fleet launched within the hour, slipping silently into the void. Vance stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, watching the empty black stretch before them. There was no tension in his crew, no last-minute preparations. They had trained for this moment, for the kind of warfare the rest of the galaxy still refused to acknowledge. Hours passed. The station loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the stars. It was intact, no sign of battle, no breaches, no damage. "Bring us in," Vance ordered. The Nemesis latched onto the station with barely a whisper. A boarding team deployed, their suits absorbing all sound as they moved like shadows through the airlock. Vance led from the front, weapon raised, his breath steady in his helmet. The interior was silent. Not just abandoned, eerily still. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A reflection. Not in glass, not in metal, but in the air itself. A distortion, subtle and fleeting, but unmistakable. He fired. The corridor erupted in chaos as something unseen shrieked, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The air shimmered, and then the thing was there, its form shifting, adapting, trying to rewrite itself faster than the human mind could register. But Vance was already moving. His squad unleashed a volley of rounds coated in nanoparticles designed to break down adaptive camouflage. The creature twisted, its body phasing between states of matter as it tried to escape, but the humans were faster, more precise. It hit the ground, writhing, its form settling into something tangible, something terrifying. Arya's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Command, we've got hostiles." Vance studied the creature's form. Tall, humanoid, Too many eyes, all locked onto him with something that almost resembled fear. "Negative," he said. "They're not hostile." Ren's voice was tight. "Then what the hell are they?" Vance stared down at the thing that had once thought itself invisible. He saw the way its limbs trembled, the way its breathing hitched. Understanding flickered behind those alien eyes. Their prey. The thing on the floor struggled, its many eyes darting between the soldiers who surrounded it. Its body, though vaguely humanoid, rippled like liquid trying to decide what shape it should take. It was intelligent, Vance could see that much. But intelligence meant nothing when fear had already set in. "Contain it," he ordered. Arya moved first, deploying a suppression field around the creature. A lattice of shimmering energy flickered into existence, caging it like an animal. The moment the field stabilized, the thing recoiled, its form glitching as if it were fighting against the laws of physics themselves. Run crouched beside it, scanning the readings on his tablet. "Its biology is impossible." His voice was hushed with something bordering on awe. "This thing exists in a quantum flux state, neither fully material nor fully immaterial. It phases between dimensions, adapting to its surroundings." "But look at it now," he tilted his head. It stuck. Vance stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "No," he crouched, meeting the creature's frantic gaze. "It's cornered." A shudder passed through its form, a whimper deep in its throat. Vance didn't need to hear its language to know what it was thinking. It had never been trapped before, never been seen before. It had always been the one watching, the one hunting. And now, in the cold, artificial light of the abandoned station, it was realizing the truth. Humanity had always been watching, too. The lights flickered. Vance's head snapped up. Static crackled in his earpiece, an eerie, unnatural hum vibrating in his skull. The temperature in the corridor dropped. "Something's here," Arya muttered. Her fingers hovered over her weapon, but she didn't fire. She was listening, feeling. Vance felt it too. The air thickened, pressing in around them like an unseen force. The creature in the containment field let out a shrill, warbling noise. Panic. Not at them. At something else. Then the shadows moved. No, not the shadows. The space itself. The darkness twisted, folding in on itself like an aperture opening, and from it, figures emerged, tall, gaunt, their bodies elongated beyond natural proportions. No weapons. No armor. They didn't need them. Ren's breath hitched. Phase shifters. Vance had read the classified reports. Ghosts in the deep void. The creatures that erased entire colonies without a single trace. No wreckage. No survivors. Just silence. Until now. The team moved instinctively, forming a defensive line, weapons raised. But the entities didn't attack. They simply watched, eyes, too many eyes, fixing on Vance, on his team, on the caged creature writhing in the suppression field. Then, in perfect synchronization, they tilted their heads. Understanding passed between them, something ancient, something unsettling. The one in the cage whimpered again, and the figures reacted, their bodies tensing, their forms flickering like a failing transmission. "Commander," Arya whispered, "I think we just pissed off a predator pack." Vance tightened his grip on his rifle. The lead entity took a step forward. The room groaned, metal straining as if the weight of reality itself was shifting. Its mouth, if it even was a mouth, parted. But the sound that came out was not a voice. It was data, a raw, pulsing frequency that vibrated through the walls, through their bones, through their very minds. A message. Arya's translation software kicked in, processing the alien signal. The words that scrolled across her display were chilling in their simplicity. "You were not meant to see." Vance exhaled slowly. Too late for that. The lead entity turned its many eyes toward the trapped one. A decision was being made. A calculation. Then it moved. Not walked. Asterisk shifted. Asterisk, it closed the distance between them in the blink of an eye, reaching for the cage with fingers that flickered between states of being. The moment it touched the suppression field, the energy flared, violent and unstable. The creature in the cage screamed. Vance fired. The shot rang out like thunder, A burst of compressed kinetic energy slamming into the lead entity's chest. For a fraction of a second, it buckled, the illusion of its intangibility breaking. But it didn't fall. It didn't even bleed. Instead, it turned its head toward Vance. The room shook. A ripple of force cascaded outward, throwing the team backward. The suppression field shattered, and the caged creature bolted, phasing straight through the floor and vanishing into the station's depths. Then the phase shifters were gone. Not a retreat. Not a surrender. Just gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Vance pushed himself up, his head ringing. Arya was already scanning, but there was nothing left to track. No residual energy, no trace of their presence. As if they had never been there at all. Except something had changed. Ren's voice broke the silence, quiet but shaken. "Commander," he pointed at the hollow display. The station systems were online again, but they weren't displaying human data. The screens were flooded with alien script, complex, layered, shifting too fast for the eye to follow. And in the center of it all, one unmistakable image burned bright. A star map. Dozens of systems highlighted. Hundreds of them. And in every single one, a blinking red marker. Vance's stomach tightened. Arya's voice was barely above a whisper. "That's not just a map." "No," Vance muttered, eyes darkening. "It's a hunting ground." The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. The map pulsed on the hollow display, a vast and sprawling web of marked locations. Each blinking red marker was a wound in the fabric of space, a place where someone, had disappeared without a trace. The truth sat between them like a loaded weapon. They were looking at a feeding pattern. Ren swallowed hard. "We always assumed they struck at random, that the disappearances were scattered anomalies, not coordinated." His fingers danced over the display, zooming in on clusters of blinking markers. "But this is systemic. It's a cycle." Vance didn't respond. He was staring at the map, his mind piecing together what it meant. The phase shifters, these predators, had been harvesting entire populations in a pattern so precise that no one had noticed. Not until now. Arya exhaled, shaking her head. "And we just made ourselves known to them." That was the real problem. For centuries, humanity had thrived in the shadows, a species dismissed as insignificant by the greater galactic community. The other races measured dominance by fleets, by planetary control, by how loudly they could announce their presence. But humanity had learned from its own history. Power wasn't about being seen. It was about striking when no one expected. Until now, they had been invisible. Now they were prey. A sharp beeping cut through the silence, pulling Vance from his thoughts. Arya's console flared red with incoming telemetry data. Her eyes darted across the screen, then widened. "We need to move," she snapped. "Right now." Vance stepped forward. "What is it?" Arya's jaw tightened. They left something behind. The station's exterior cameras flickered to life, showing the black expanse of space beyond. At first, it was empty. Then, the stars shifted. No, not the stars. Something else. A ripple in the void. A distortion, like heat bending the horizon, except this was vast, stretching across the field of vision like a curtain unfurling. Then, the Nemesis's proximity alarms wailed. Ren's hands trembled over his tablet. They're not gone. They were never gone. Vance was already moving. Emergency launch protocol. Now, the team sprinted through the corridors, boots pounding against metal. The station around them groaned, the pressure in the air growing heavier. Whatever the phase shifters had left behind, it was still here. As they reached the docking bay, the Nemesis loomed before them, its dark hull blending into the station's shadows. The ship's external lights pulsed as its systems powered up, responding to the sudden threat. The moment they cleared the airlock, Vance barked orders. "Detonate the charges." Arya didn't hesitate. She slammed her palm against the override panel, triggering the explosives they had planted along the station's structural weak points. A second of silence. Then the world shattered. The shockwave hit them as the docking clamps disengaged, sending the Nemesis hurtling backward into the void. Fire and debris bloomed outward, swallowing the station in a violent eruption of light and shrapnel. But the distortion in space did not vanish. Instead, it moved. The Nemesis' sensor screamed as the anomaly shifted, no longer trying to conceal itself. It was unfolding, revealing something vast. Something wrong. Ren's voice was a whisper. That's a ship. Not a ship. A thing. It was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. An obsidian leviathan, its surface shifting like liquid shadow. It did not emit light, nor did it reflect it. It simply was a void given shape, coiling and writhing against the backdrop of the stars. And it was waking up. Vance's grip tightened on the railing. Arya, full burn. Get us out of here. The engines roared to life, propelling them into the black. The enemy ship, or whatever it was, did not pursue. It didn't need to, because something was already inside. A cold, crawling sensation spread through the ship's corridors. The lights flickered. The hum of the reactor wavered. Shadows stretched unnaturally, twisting against the bulkheads, as if something unseen was moving through them. Then the first scream rang out over comms. Engineering's compromised, a panicked voice shouted. Something's in here. Arya's hands flew over the controls, sealing off lower decks. But it didn't matter. The darkness was spreading. The Nemesis groaned as if in pain, the ship's systems faltering. The temperature plummeted, frost creeping along the metal surfaces. Vance could feel it pressing against his skull, an alien presence seeping into every crack, every thought. They hadn't escaped. They had brought it with them. And now there was no running. The emergency lights pulsed in a rhythmic red glow, bathing the corridors of the Nemesis in an eerie haze. The ship groaned like a wounded beast, the sound reverberating through its metal skeleton. Something was moving in the dark. Vance gripped his rifle tighter, his breath controlled but deliberate. His team had fought against impossible odds before, but this was different. This wasn't an enemy that could be shot, bargained with, or outrun. It was something old, something patient, something that had only now decided to acknowledge them. Report, he ordered, his voice steady despite the pressure constricting his chest. Arya's voice crackled through the comms. Lower decks are completely cut off. Whatever this thing is, it's phasing in and out of the ship's systems. It's rewriting our reality as it moves. Ren's frantic typing filled the bridge, his eyes darting between data streams. I can't isolate it. The moment I try to run a diagnostic, the code shifts. It's learning. He hesitated, then added, No, it's watching me. Vance exhaled through his nose. Of course it was. A sharp clatter echoed through the dimly lit hallway ahead, metal scraping against metal. The three of them turned as one, rifles raised. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, distorting into grotesque shapes before snapping back. Then a voice, thin, broken, drifted through the air. Help me. Ren stiffened. That's impossible, Arya finished. They had all heard it. The voice belonged to Sergeant Holloway. Holloway had been stationed in engineering when the first scream rang out. His vitals had flatlined 30 seconds later. The ship shifted, not physically, but perceptibly. The hallway seemed longer than before. The doors they had passed minutes ago were missing. The Nemesis was no longer a structure of steel and circuitry. It was something malleable, something uncertain. And it wasn't theirs anymore. Ren's breath was uneven. This thing isn't just inside the ship. It is the ship. The lights flickered. Then, just ahead of them, a figure stepped into view. Holloway, or something wearing him. His body stood at an unnatural angle, his joints subtly misaligned, as if his bones had been reshaped to fit a different frame. His mouth opened, but his lips didn't move in sync with the words that followed. Commander. The voice was his, but not. You don't belong here. Arya's fingers hovered over the trigger. You're not real. Holloway's head tilted too far, his neck cracking like dried wood. Neither are you. The lights surged to full brightness, and in that blinding instant, the walls of the corridor melted away. Suddenly, they weren't aboard the Nemesis anymore. They stood in open space, stars stretching infinitely around them, the cold vastness pressing in from all sides. Yet they could still breathe, still stand as if a floor existed beneath them. And before them, stretching beyond comprehension, was it. The phase shifter's true form was not a ship nor a creature. It was an absence, a wound in the fabric of existence itself. It had no defined edges, no beginning or end. It simply was. It pulsed with unreadable patterns, shifting through realities, threading itself through dimensions unseen. Vance felt something scrape against his mind, gentle yet suffocating. A presence. A thought that wasn't his own. You were never meant to see. Pain lanced through his skull as visions flooded his consciousness. Images of entire civilizations erased in an instant. Worlds reduced to nothingness without fire, without war, just gone. Humanity had thought itself clever, thought it had remained unnoticed in the grand scheme of the universe. But these things had always known. They had simply not cared. Until now. Vance forced his mind back into focus. He had spent his life surviving impossible situations, clawing his way out of traps meant to kill lesser men. This would be no different. He reached for his belt and pulled a pulse charge free, activating the device with a sharp twist. The energy within crackled, volatile, unstable. It wouldn't kill this thing, but it would hurt it. The entity reacted instantly. The illusion snapped, and they were back aboard the Nemesis. The walls shuddered as something vast recoiled, the ship groaning as if gasping for air. Now, Vance barked. Arya was already moving, rerouting the ship's core energy into a full system purge. The Nemesis' engine screamed, igniting in a burst of raw, unfiltered power. A blinding surge of energy detonated outward, searing through the entity's hold on the ship. The darkness shrieked, not with sound, but with something deeper, a psychic wail that shattered across their consciousness like breaking glass. The ship lurched, flung free from the entity's grasp, tumbling into the void. Then silence. The emergency lights flickered, stabilizing. The Nemesis' systems rebooted one by one, purging the last remnants of foreign interference. The suffocating presence was gone. Ren collapsed against the console, exhaling shakily. Did we kill it? Vance's expression was grim. No, he turned toward the viewport. The space where the entity had been was empty, as if it had never existed at all. But he knew better. They had wounded it, and now it knew what humanity was capable of. Arya straightened, her eyes locking onto his. What do we do now? Vance didn't hesitate. We prepare.